shrinked until Joe Biden ended up winning the state of Georgia by about 11,700 votes. And he won Georgia because black people turned out to vote. The first time Georgia had went blue since 1992. And then we had a Senate runoff. And Georgia did something extremely unusual. We had a runoff of both of the Senate seats in the state of Georgia. And the national prediction was that the Republicans would win both Senate seats in the runoff, and the reason they expected that was because blacks very seldom turn out to vote twice. And the projection was that the turnout among blacks in the Senate runoff would be much less than the black turnout on November the 3rd. But again, Operation Voter Turnout, we did our very best to get the black vote out. And I'm extremely pleased because on January the 5th, the black turnout in Georgia in the runoff almost equaled the amount of the turnout on November the 3rd. The white turnout decreased. The black turnout increased. And Georgia did, for the first time, we elected a black to the United States Senate from Georgia, and we elected a Jew to the United States Senate from Georgia. So I just want you to know I am extremely proud of what blacks in Georgia did in November 2020 and in January 2021. But now, my brothers and sisters, the challenge is moving forward. The challenge is moving forward, and we are in, I think, in this country, this is the worst racial environment since the civil rights movement of the 1960s. It is absolutely teetotal horrible. And let me say again, in the United States today, we do not have two parties. In the United States today, we have the Democratic Party and a cult. And the leader of that cult is Donald Trump. And they do whatever he tells them to do. And as a result, our democracy is at risk. In 2018, at a mid-year meeting in Columbus, I made a statement that our democracy was at risk and that Donald Trump really wanted to become an anarchist. He wanted to be like Vladimir Putin. And I forget the little man name in Korea. What's his name? Kim Young something. But that's what he wanted to be like. All the world leaders he was close to were folk like Putin and Xi in China and other thugs. Those were the ones he was close to. And that's the kind of leader he wanted to be in this country. And so I want us to pay very careful attention to where we are today. Because my brothers and sisters, since the November election, you have 47 states which have submitted 361 bills. Most all of them seek to suppress the votes of blacks and people of color to make it harder for us to vote. These laws are being put in place as a punishment for black people turning out in such large numbers. And they are based on what's been called the big lie. The big lie is that the 2020 election was stolen, that Donald Trump really won. But because of fraudulent voting, that's why Joe Biden is president. And brothers and sisters, to show you how precarious a position we are in, 70% of Republicans do not believe that Joe Biden was legitimately elected president of the United States. Nationwide, almost 40% of Americans believe Joe Biden is not the legitimately elected president. And you now have several states which are trying to go through what they call bogus recounts to try to prove that, in fact, Trump won. And I think the Democrats are too soft and too weak. They are too soft and they're too weak. Faith leaders across Georgia have come up with several things that we're trying to do to counteract what they're trying to do in Georgia. And next year, Georgia will elect a governor, and Georgia will elect a United States senator. Raphael Warnock, who got elected to the United States Senate, where is he? Raphael Warnock, who got elected to the United States Senate, the pastor of Ebenezer Church in Atlanta, has to run for re-election next year. I suspect there's a strong possibility that Stacey Abrams will run for governor of Georgia. All this stuff that's been passed in Georgia Senate Bill 202 is specifically designed to make it almost impossible for Senator Warnock to be reelected or for Stacey Abrams to be elected. Now, brothers and sisters, it's important. The reason I'm taking the time this morning is because I want us to understand exactly what Senate Bill 202 does and how it makes it harder for blacks to vote. You see ads on television talking about Senate Bill 202 expands voting opportunity. No, it doesn't. There are a host of things in Senate Bill 202 which makes it hard for us to vote. The first thing it does, because blacks turned out in such large numbers to vote by absentee ballot, they have gone after making it harder to vote by absentee ballot. They have reduced the length of time to vote by absentee ballot by 11 days. And what they have done now, if you vote by absentee ballot, Election day, for example, in 2020, Election day was on November the 3rd. Under SB 202, if the election, say, is November the 3rd, if you vote by absentee ballot, you have got to have your ballot returned 11 days prior to November the 3rd. Which means even if Election day is November the 3rd, if your election ballot gets in November the 1st, your ballot will not be counted. Even though you got your ballot back in before Election day, if it is not in 11 days prior to Election day, your ballot will not be counted. Additionally, with the absentee ballot in November 2020, you did a signature match They match the signature on your absentee ballot with the signature on your voter registration form. And they call it signature match. Under SB 202, it would no longer be a match of signature. Under 202, you've got to have a photo, you've got to have a driver's license with a photo on it. Now, again, that primarily or largely impacts blacks. A whole lot of black senior citizens over the age, I'm gonna say of 70, no longer drive or do not have a driver's ID with a photo. So you've got to get another form to use in order to have your absentee ballot counted. So that's the first thing. Second thing is ballot drop boxes. For example, in 2020, I voted by absentee, by a ballot drop box. My ballot drop box was at the Milton Library, which was a block from where I live. And I took my absentee ballot to that Milton drop box about 6:30 in the evening and dropped it in the box. Under SB 202, under the ballot drop box now, the ballot drop box will no longer be located outside. For example, my ballot drop box was outside of the Milton Library. Under SB 202, the ballot drop box now must be located inside the building. And if that building closes at 5 o'clock, that ballot drop box is no longer available, which means if you get off work after 5 o'clock, you cannot drop your absentee ballot in the ballot drop box. So that's the first problem. The second problem is worse. And what they say is now under SB 202, the law is that every county in Georgia, all 159 counties, must have a ballot drop box. Before, every county didn't have one, particularly in the southern rural counties. A lot of the counties did not have a ballot drop box. So they are bragging now that they've expanded voting opportunity because the law is every county must have a ballot drop box. But let me tell you how deceptive and misleading that is. You can have one ballot drop box for every 100,000 voters in the county. One ballot drop box for every 100,000 voters in the county. Most rural counties in Georgia have less than 100,000 voters. So all of them will have one ballot drop box. But here's the catch and where it makes it harder for blacks to vote. Use Fulton County. Fulton County in Atlanta, or Atlanta, which is a part of Fulton County. Fulton County geographically and numerically is the largest county in the state of Georgia. Most blacks in Georgia live in Fulton County. In 2020, Fulton County had 35 ballot drop boxes. Under SB 202, Fulton County can now only have 5 ballot drop boxes, which means it is not only will it be locked at 5 o'clock, but if you are a senior citizen, don't have transportation, if you only have 5 in the entire county, the likelihood there is not a ballot drop box near you. it's going to be hard for a whole lot of people, especially those who don't have their own cars. And in the urban areas of this state, a lot of folks do not have their own transportation. It's going to be hard to vote. In addition to that, in the urban areas of the state, in 2020, they have what they call mobile voting units. They were nice mobile units that traveled around the county, enabling people to vote. Well, again, SB 2020 now makes those mobile.
Hi, is Reginald there? Hi, is Reginald there?
No.
Thank you. There's
Somebody got to show me how to work this Apple Watch. But anyway, I heard this thing talking to me. Anyway, on the SB 202, those mobile units are now illegal. They cannot go to make it easier for people to vote. In addition, let me tell you what else they did. Stacey Abrams' campaign for governor in 2018 did a phenomenal thing. They sent an absentee ballot to everybody who had not voted in the previous election. You got an absentee ballot in the mail. One of the things that increased the turnout for blacks was all of them got these absentee ballots in the mail from her campaign. All the people had to do was fill them out. Well, under SB 202, that is now against the law. The NAACP in 2020 mailed out absentee ballot applications for people to vote by absentee ballot. Under SB 202, that is now against the law. In 2020, one of the things we did with Operation Voter Turnout, we picked up people's absentee ballots and took them to the election office for them, or put them in the mailbox for them. Under SB 202, that is now against the law. They are making it extremely hard. If you live with your spouse and your spouse is handicapped and not able to get out, you may be her husband or her wife. The only way you can take their absentee ballot and put it in the vote, you've got to sign a sworn affidavit. So complicated. Before, you could just take your wife's absentee ballot and drop it in. But now you've got to sign an affidavit certifying that you are their spouse. Otherwise, if you just take it and try to drop it in, you can be arrested, because now that is against the law. If you are standing in a long line, which doesn't happen in the rural area, but in the inner city, if there's a voting line and you go take somebody a bottle of water within 150 feet of the polling site, you've committed a crime. It's against the law. The last thing about that bill, which makes it so absolutely horrendous, Donald Trump did not want Georgia's election to be certified. Under SB 202, the State Election Commission, and the State Election Commission is not bipartisan. It's not half Democrat and half Republican. The State Election Commission in Georgia is predominantly Republican. And under SB 202, the State Election Commission can decide, say, for example, in Fulton County, where most blacks live, the State Election Commission can decide that Fulton County's election is not being performed what they call up to standard. They can decide to take over Fulton County's election. And they can bring somebody in from anywhere in the state and take over Fulton County. And they will certify who won. It might be that a person may have won by 500,000 votes in Fulton County. The State Election Commission can declare the other person won. Now that's all that happens with SB 202. It is a horrendous bill. Now we tried as much as we could to block the passage of SB 202. And we tried to get major corporations in Georgia to speak out against SB 202. We tried to get Coca-Cola, we tried to get Delta, we tried to get UPS, tried to get Aflac, tried to get just a host of them. And before the bill passed, none of those corporations spoke out in opposition to SB 202. And I got with faith leaders and said, we need to then talk about boycotting these companies because they get our money, we buy their products, but they don't support us in seeking to protect our right to vote. And so after we announced we were considering a boycott, 2 days later, Coca-Cola, Delta Airlines, UPS, Aflac, all of them came out in opposition to SB 202. The only problem is they came out after the bill passed. And to show you how treacherous the Republicans are, they were still so angry that they spoke out. For example, Delta Airlines spoke out. Delta Airlines receives a $50 million tax break on jet fuel from the state. When Delta Airlines spoke out against the bill, the state legislature tried to rescind the $50 million tax break for Delta Airlines. It passed in the House. The only reason it didn't pass in the Senate was because it was the last day of the legislative session and time ran out. But that's how treacherous they are. My brothers and sisters, we are in a very dangerous situation in this country. And I want you to understand this primarily has to do with race. This primarily has to do with race. Now let me just say this and be bold enough to say it. And there is a reporter in the room, but I'm gonna say what I'm gonna say. And that is, let me give you an example of what the problem is. And Donald Trump, he understood the racial dynamic in this country. And he played to it. He played to it. And whatever it is you want to say, and one of the reasons why white women went predominantly Democrat the last election, they are finally opening their eyes to see that in this country, the power rests with white men. Now, stop and think about it. White men control 75 to 80% of the power in this country. Look at the business community. 75 to 80% of corporate heads are white men. When Governor Kemp signed SB 202, he signed it in a locked room with 6 white men underneath the picture of a slave plantation. And so the fear is white men are losing their power. Now that's what all this is about. And what's happened, for example, in Georgia, between 2016 2020, there were more than 800,000 new voters in this state, most of them black and people of color. The problem Republicans have, and notice what they're doing, because of their policies, they realize they cannot win the votes of blacks and people of color. So rather than trying to expand their base, they decide we've got to try to reduce the number of voters. We can't let all these new people coming in here vote. So that's what voter suppression is about. Now, I've said all of that to say this. We are now in the process of litigation. The NAACP Legal Defense Fund, the American Civil Liberties Union, the Southern Poverty Law Center, we had a meeting. They are representing us pro bono in court on this matter. The 6th District is the first litigant. I got with the Council of Bishops. They voted unanimously. The Connectional A.M.E. Church is a litigant. To their credit, now, you know, I'm a good Sigma. I really am. And the sisters who are great Zetas, and I hate to concede this, but I'm going to concede it. The second litigant on there are the Deltas. Don't worry, we're going to catch up. But we're in the process now. The CME Church is considering, the AME Zion Church is considering. In fact, I'm so pleased the United Methodist Church is considering. We are trying to get a host of people to be litigants in this case because, brothers and sisters, the legislation they passed is unconstitutional. Now, I'm going to need your help on several things. Several things. On January the 8th, not January, June the 8th. June the 8th at 12 o'clock, we're having a prayer vigil at the State House. The theme for it is prayer changes things. I'm asking all the AMEs who can to be there for the prayer vigil on June 8th. The second thing is on June 16th, and I know many of you will not be able to go, but those who can go, because the brothers and sisters, really the struggle now is not on the bills being passed in these states. Georgia's passed a bill, Texas has passed a bill, Arizona's passed a bill, Michigan is getting ready to pass it. All of these states, especially controlled by Republicans, are going to pass these voter suppression bills. So really, we're not going to win the battle on these state bills. The major battle is going to be on federal legislation. There are two bills, S1, the For the People Act, and S4, the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Act. Those are really the two bills that are important. The reasoning for that is because if these federal bills pass, then the bills passed at the state level are negated. Even though they passed at the state level, they will be thrown out because federal legislation supersedes state legislation. So that's where the battle is now. And so we have got to get them to pass S1 and S4. Fortunately, the bills have passed in the House of Representatives. And the representatives, they were H1 and H4. They have passed in the House. They are now before the Senate. The Democrats, it's 50-50 in the Senate. Vice President Harris would become the 51st vote to pass it. But the Senate has this old antiquated system called the filibuster. And so in the Senate, you've got to have 60 votes to pass legislation. 60 votes. You need 10 Republicans to go with the 50 Democrats to pass S1 and S4. I think we've got 5 of the votes. And so on June 16th, we're going to be having again, and we're calling it Faith Leaders, but we're meeting in Washington. We will be having a press conference at Metropolitan A.M.E. Church. We will then be going to the different senators' offices. We've picked Senator Collins, Senator Romney, Senator Cassidy of Louisiana, Senator Sass of Nebraska, and Senator Murkowski of Alaska. We're going to try to, nothing changes without pressure. And so we're going to try to, and I don't want to use the word pressure to them, we're going to try to persuade those 5 senators to join in passing S1 and S4. In addition, a group of us will be meeting with President Biden, Vice President Harris at the White House, but we have really got to pass. And so I'm asking those of you who will be able to come to Washington, the details will be coming out next week, we need you to do that. Brothers and sisters, our democracy is really at risk. You can't look June 16th. You can't even look at the news today without seeing something stupid that they've done. Now, they invaded the Capitol on January the 6th, and they want to have a commission like they had to investigate 9/11. Well, now the Republicans are saying, no, we're not going to go with that. If we do that, then we also want you to investigate Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter ain't had nothing to do with what happened in Washington on January 6th. Black Lives Matter is smarter than to be stupid. All right. So anyways, so we will need your help. Secondly, we need to begin to plan now for the 2022 election. We need to put in place Operation Voter Turnout now for 2022. So in the next week, you'll be getting information from the office dealing with our organizing for 2022. We need to make sure everybody who voted in 2020 votes in 2022. Brothers and sisters who didn't vote in 2020 need to vote in 2022. And let me tell you how serious it is. As great as the turnout was in November of 2020, as great as the black turnout was, can I tell you there are still over 400,000 blacks in Georgia who did not vote? 400,000 blacks in Georgia who still did, as great as the turnout was. Blacks make up 33% of the voting population in Georgia. If you throw in the voters of color who make up about 12%, that's almost half of Georgia's voting population. So it is critically important. And we've got to get, especially blacks who live out in the country and in the rural areas, there are all blacks don't live in the inner city. So we've got to make sure we get everybody to vote. Now let me tell you all what's tickled. Now this is A.M.E. politics. Show you how crazy A.M.Es can be. Now people don't believe that I am serious about social justice. So now the word is that the reason I got started in all this stuff was because the people would say that Bishop Jackson is the man in Georgia. He can't leave Georgia because he got to stay there and finish what he started on this vote. Now, brothers and sisters, that may sound good, but I ain't that smart. I just think it's important for the betterment of our people that we vote. My brothers and my sisters, blacks are still being shot almost every day by somebody in law enforcement. If we don't change the laws regarding policing in this country, it's not going to get better. How you vote matters. They keep giving money to all of these farmers because they claim they were being severely impacted. My brothers and sisters, they act like we don't have black farmers in the United States. So understand, elections have consequences. How many folk in here have student loans? Now, Joe Biden is a friend of mine. We're from Delaware, that great state. Y'all say Delaware. Yeah, that's it. And he's trying to push to have $10,000 of school debt wiped off. Now, I'm fussing because I think it ought to go to $50,000 of school debt. A whole lot of black folk have $100,000 worth of school debt. And so this is one of the things where me and my friend, we're having a little tug of war. This one, I'm with AOC and the progressives on this one. All right, now I've said enough. Any questions on anything I've said thus far? Any questions? I'll respond that yes. Somebody take her microphone, please.
I know you said that there would be details followed. I was just going to ask you, will there be transportation available, or will we have to get there on our own to Washington?
No, we're trying to arrange that. In fact, one of my new best friends is the president of Coca-Cola. Now, when I was stunned when I met him, I did not know the president of Coca-Cola was from United Kingdom. I did not know that. But Coca-Cola is going to agree to give us money to help us with this effort. So we'll be providing information on that. Okay?
Also, one more thing. I'd like to be on the committee, any of the committees that you need to help as far as for voter suppression. My name is Brenda Cox, and I'm from Flat Rock A.M.E. Church in Fayetteville, and I'm also the political action chairperson for NAACP.
We're going to need all the help we can get.
Okay.
And I appreciate you from Flat Rock. Everywhere I go, I look up you there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions before I move on? Rem Logan.
Thank you, Bishop. I hope I'm in order for both offering commendation for the work, the analysis, the clarity in terms of helping us to kind of synthesize the issues and come to some particular modus and program moving forward, and possibly even asking if we could offer some kind of endorsement to your plan as a district to kind of formally endorse your program going forward. I would like to move that motion if that's in order, sir.
All right. Is there a second? All right. All in favor say aye. Thank you. And let me say this too. You know, one of the things I'm extremely appreciative of, other folk who have joined. In Decatur, there's a Reverend Lee May. His father was here yesterday. His father is a retired minister from the 5th District of the A.M.E. Church. His son now pastors up in Decatur, has been a tremendous help. Reverend Timothy McDonald of Iconium Baptist Church in Atlanta, Dr. Jamal Bryant. There are about 25 ministers across the state who have been extremely helpful in this effort. And let me say, one of the things we've got to do with AMEs, because the fact of the matter is AMEs are now perhaps, and I use the word perhaps, the most influential black faith group in the state. And I say my concern is that cannot be centered around one person. And so again, I say again, good leadership develops other leaders. And so we need other AMEs, particularly clergy, to play a role in leadership. You know, if the Lord called me tomorrow, and Lord, I'm just using this as an example, you know, we need to have other folk who are leaders who are able to carry on the work. One of the worst things that happened to us was when Dr. King was assassinated. There was a tremendous void in leadership, and in fact, infighting for leadership. You know, I've been, you know, Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, folk from all over the country have been, you know, calling, and they are supportive of what we're doing. But one of the things I've said to them is we have good leadership on the ground in Georgia, because ultimately whatever happens in Georgia, leadership in Georgia has got to lead. Everything rises or falls on leadership. So I'm hoping in every conference, and we need leadership in every conference. Bernard Clark, stand up, Dr. Clark. I really want to thank Dr. Clark. He has been extremely helpful. And here, and doing a tremendous job down in the Savannah area. And we need that in every conference. I want to thank Senator Reverend McMichael. She was over in Hawaii, but I needed some lay people, and she got a couple of good lay people out of Greater Gaines Chapel. I want to thank Stand Up Augusta Hall and B.A. Hart, Baker, and several of the conferences when it came to voter registration and all of that, and you all did a tremendous job. And I hope I didn't leave anybody out. But y'all did a tremendous job. Reverend D. Dawkins Hagler did a tremendous job. In fact, we hired about 300 people from our churches to work for the November and January elections. Yes, it's Sister Janice Stewart coming in here. She was one of them working the case. Thank you, Sister Stewart. Just say you're welcome. So anyway, I just want to thank all of you all. You all did a tremendous, tremendous job. Thank you so much. All right, and yes, Elder Bass. Now, Elder Bass, now you know I'm a Sigma. No, and I'm just teasing. I'm just teasing. Okay. No, I was just saying that you came in late. I comment on the fact that the Deltas, you just want me to do the Deltas twice. All the deltas, please stand. All the deltas. Will all the deltas please stand? Now y'all give the deltas a big hand for all the work they doing. No, the deltas really have, I can't knock them. That's what I'm saying. I don't want to get too carried away, but they've been tremendous. All the Zetas in here, now y'all got to catch up, all right? Any other question on anything? Now let me say this, we have a updated profile we need from everybody. So where are these at, in the back? They're passing these out. Please fill out these profiles. We need them. It's very, very important. Reverend Alexander?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Bishop. My question has to do with some of the comments you made about the police reforms. How can we help with that? When I pastored in Columbus, during the time that the General Conference met in Philadelphia, they had a program called the Pastors Chaplains Program. We rode with policemen.
The police reform is a matter of great frustration to me. Senator Cory Booker out of New Jersey is the lead Democrat. The problem is there is a brother who's United States Senator from South Carolina named Tim Scott. He's the lead senator for the Republicans. He is not nearly as strong on police reform as he ought to be. So again, nothing changes without pressure. So they're in negotiations now. President Biden had hoped to be able to sign the police. In fact, it's called the George Floyd Policing Act. President Biden had hoped to be able to sign that bill next week. But because negotiations are stuck, and again, it requires 60 votes in the Senate, they're not going to be able to sign that next week, and the Congress goes on a 3-week recess. So I'm not sure what's going to happen, but stay in prayer over it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, please fill out this form. Any other questions before we get ready for our 11:30 service?
The reconciliation measure that the Senate could possibly do, just come speak to that if you don't mind.
Yeah, reconciliation is a process the Senate can use where it does not need 60 votes. But there are certain criteria that must be met in order for it to even qualify for reconciliation. Unfortunately, the police reform bill is one of those that doesn't meet the criteria. No, matter of fact, all of those bills, we need to get 60 votes in the Senate. So, Reverend Simmons, you had a question?
First of all, Bishop, I just want to commend you again on your leadership for such a time as this. I think it's just God, you are God sent. And also, I pray that it's God's will that you continue to finish up your season in Georgia, 3 more years. But also, Bishop, I'm here to call on the 6th Episcopal District to celebrate with the Atlanta East District as we celebrate our presiding elder, Dr. Thomas Best, 46 years in ministry, almost 50 years. We will be at Antioch A.M.E. Church in Stone Mountain, June the 12th at 4 p.m. And we also have some flyers that we will be passing out so you can see all the many ways that you can share in the celebration. Looking forward to all of you weighing in one way or another. God bless you and thank you, Bishop.
Thank you so much, Reverend Simeon. I remember that's June the 12th, correct? All right, at Antioch at 4:00 p.m. All right. Yes, Reverend Lordnum.
Yes, Bishop. We also asked if you would announce to the conference, if you would, our good friend and fellow A.M.E. steward, Senator Lester Jackson, as he runs for the Labor Commission in the state of Georgia.
Yeah, let me say this. Senator Lester Jackson has been one of the biggest supporters of our efforts. In fact, he is a good A.M.E. Reverend Lordham is his pastor. He has been tremendous. When I came to Georgia and mentioned the hate crimes law, it was Senator Lester Jackson who in the legislature took leadership to help us get that bill passed. And Senator Jackson is going to be a candidate for Secretary of Labor, isn't it? Senator Jackson is going to be a candidate for Secretary of Labor. And I'm going to be reaching out to AMEs because we need to support him. Brothers and sisters, elections are not free. Take my word for it. And so we're going to help Senator Jackson. In fact, AMEs ought to be happy because almost Georgia had the largest legislative black caucus in the country. We got more AMEs in the legislative black caucus than anybody else. You ought to be very pleased. In fact, one of our pastors, Representative Karen Bennett, is a member of the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus. In fact, Senator Tanya Anderson is the president of the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus, a good AME. So we are very fortunate. We need to use the leadership that we have. All right, now let us get ready to for our 11:30 service. I want to thank our reporter from Reuters who's here with us today. All right, let us get ready for our 11:30 service. Five-minute break. 5 minutes.